Alex had just finished his shift at the veterinary clinic and was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. It had been a long day, full of the usual ups and downs of caring for sick animals, offering comfort to worried pet owners, and trying to make a difference in the lives of those who trusted him with their pet's health. The sun was beginning to set as he made his way down the winding country road, heading back to his small house on the outskirts of town. It was a peaceful drive, the kind he loved, the roads empty and quiet, the fields and trees bathed in the soft glow of the fading light. He had almost forgotten what a busy day it had been when his attention was caught by something unusual on the side of the road. A small truck, old and battered, had abruptly pulled over, its tires skidding slightly on the gravel. Alex squinted, trying to make sense of the situation. There was no one around. Just the sound of the wind rustling the trees and the occasional chirp of crickets. Then, his heart sank. The truck's door swung open, and to his shock, several tiny golden-furred puppies were unceremoniously tossed out onto the roadside. They tumbled to the ground in a heap, their small bodies landing in the dirt, their legs scrambling in confusion. For a moment, Alex couldn't move. He was stunned, unsure if he had seen it right. But as the truck sped off without a second glance, the reality of what he had just witnessed hit him like a wave. The puppies, still trembling from the shock of being tossed away, huddled together in the grass. They were so small, no more than a few weeks old, with their eyes wide in fear and confusion. There was no mistaking it now, they had been abandoned. Alex's hands gripped the steering wheel, his thoughts racing. He couldn't just drive past. He knew that. Deep down, as a veterinarian, he had seen his fair share of unfortunate situations. But this one cut deeper than most. These were innocent creatures, left to fend for themselves on a busy road where cars whizzed by without a care. It didn't take long for Alex to make up his mind. He pulled over to the side of the road, his heart heavy with both anger and compassion. He stepped out of his car, his boots crunching on the gravel as he moved toward the puppies. They were so small, so fragile. He could see that they were cold and scared, their little bodies shaking. As he knelt down, one of the puppies, its fur a soft shade of gold, lifted its head and stared at him with wide, pleading eyes. For a moment, Alex just looked at them, his heart breaking. He could tell right away that they hadn't been left there for long. They were still full of fear, still unsure of what was happening. It was a heartbreaking sight, one that made his chest ache. Alex knew he had to act quickly. He carefully reached down, his hands gentle as he scooped up the trembling puppy in his arms. The little thing nuzzled against him, its tiny body still shaking. He spoke softly to it, trying to offer some comfort. The other puppies followed suit, their eyes wary but trusting as he gently gathered them up. One by one, there were 5 in total, all golden and beautiful, each of them no older than a few weeks. Their eyes were wide, and their tiny faces were filled with confusion. It was clear that they had never known anything other than their mother's care. And now, they had been left to fend for themselves. Alex knew that time was of the essence. As he carefully loaded the puppies into his car, his mind raced with questions. Who could do something like this? Who could abandon these innocent creatures? Knowing they were helpless, the idea of someone being so cruel made his blood boil. As he drove to the clinic, he kept his eyes on the puppies in the back seat, watching as they huddled together for warmth. They were still scared, but they seemed to calm down a little, their small bodies finding comfort in each other's presence. He could tell they were beginning to trust him, even if just a little. By the time Alex reached the clinic, the puppies had started to relax. He immediately took them inside, knowing that he had to act quickly. The first thing he did was assess their health. They looked malnourished and dirty, their fur matted with dirt and bits of leaves from the roadside. but their biggest need was warmth. He placed them in a large kennel, lined with soft blankets, and turned on the heating lamp to keep them warm. It didn't take long for the puppies to fall asleep. Their tiny bodies curled up together in a tight little ball. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility for them. He knew that he couldn't just let them go. These puppies needed a future, a chance at a better life. He spent the next several hours caring for them, making sure they were fed, cleaned, and comfortable. The anger he felt for their abandonment still simmered in his chest. But he knew that the most important thing now was their well-being. As the night wore on, Alex made plans to find them the homes they deserved. He would make sure they got the care they needed, and he would help them find families who would love and cherish them. But in that quiet moment, as he sat watching the puppies sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that their story was far from over. The pain of their abandonment was still fresh, but there was hope for them now. They had been given a second chance, and Alex would make sure they would never be alone again. Alex worked tirelessly through the evening, focused entirely on the puppies he had rescued from the side of the road. After the shock of discovering their abandonment, his heart still heavy with anger, he carefully examined each of the small creatures, trying to calm his growing unease. As he began his checks, something odd struck him. When he gently ran his fingers along the fur of one of the puppies, he noticed something peculiar just behind its neck. At first, he thought it might just be a patch of rough skin or an insect bite. But when he looked closer, his stomach dropped. There, beneath the soft golden fur, was a small, perfectly circular scar. It wasn't like a normal scratch or injury. This scar was too neat, too deliberate. As he moved to the next puppy, he noticed the same thing, a scar behind its neck. And then, another, and another. They were all identical scars, each in the same spot. It made no sense to him. Why would they all have the same mark? Alex's mind raced with questions. These puppies had clearly been through something beyond the ordinary care of a pet. Something darker. His hands trembled slightly as he continued his examination. And with each puppy, the puzzle pieces began to fall into place. Something wasn't right. He could no longer ignore the feeling creeping over him. The feeling that these puppies hadn't just been abandoned by careless owners. They had been used. As a veterinarian, Alex had seen his share of animals who had suffered from mistreatment or neglect. He had spent years healing wounds, offering comfort to abused animals, and trying to right the wrongs of their past. But this was different. This wasn't the work of neglectful pet owners. It felt like something more sinister. His mind turned quickly to one of the more unpleasant aspects of his profession: experimentation. Sadly, there were cases where animals were used for testing, subjected to chemical injections and experiments that had nothing to do with their well-being. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that these puppies had been part of something far darker. To confirm his suspicions, Alex knew he needed to run lab tests. He couldn't just guess. He had to know for sure what had been done to them. With urgency, he carefully took blood samples from each of the puppies, making sure to handle them gently despite the rising dread in his chest. He knew that whatever was in their bodies could be dangerous, not just to them, but to anyone who might come in contact with it. As the evening turned into night, Alex worked in the clinic's small laboratory, running tests on the blood samples. The quiet buzz of the machines was almost deafening in the silence of the room. Hours seemed to stretch on endlessly as he awaited the results. But when they finally came back, his worst fears were confirmed. The chemical compound found in their systems was unlike anything he had encountered before. It was not a standard vaccine or treatment. It wasn't even something that would be typically used in a medical setting. This was a substance designed for something else, something far more nefarious. His hands trembled as he read the results over and over again. The puppies had been injected with a synthetic chemical, a compound used in experimental testing. It was clear now. These puppies were not just abandoned, they were discarded test subjects, left to die after their purpose had been served. Alex's mind reeled as he tried to process what he had just discovered. The idea that someone, somewhere, had been conducting cruel experiments on these innocent puppies filled him with a deep sense of horror. How could anyone treat animals like this? The scars behind their necks, the strange chemical in their systems, everything pointed to a well-organized, deliberate act of abuse. They hadn't been loved. They hadn't been cared for. They had been nothing more than tools, discarded when they were no longer of use. He had seen cruelty before. But this was beyond his comprehension. The cruelty of it hit him like a punch to the stomach. Who could do this? Who could subject innocent animals to such horrors? Alex found it hard to breathe, his chest tight with the weight of what he had uncovered. He wasn't just angry anymore, he was filled with a sense of helplessness. What kind of world were we living in where this kind of thing happened? How many more animals were out there, suffering at the hands of people who saw them as nothing more than experiments? Objects, tools to be discarded. He knew, deep down, that these puppies weren't the only ones. There had to be more. There had to be other animals who had been subjected to similar horrors, abandoned when they had served their purpose. His heart ached for those unseen victims. He had to do something. Alex stood there in his small clinic, staring at the test results in front of him. The puppies were asleep in their kennel, their tiny bodies curled up together in a warm, safe place, a stark contrast to the terrifying fate they had nearly met. He didn't know how to fix the system that allowed such things to happen. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let this slide. He couldn't ignore it. These puppies had been given a second chance. But there were others out there who needed help, too. His anger burned with a new intensity now, not just for the individuals who had abandoned the puppies, but for the system that allowed such cruelty to exist in the first place. Alex made a vow to himself that night. He would get to the bottom of this. He would find out who was responsible for using these puppies in experiments. And he would do whatever it took to stop it. But more than that, he would speak up for every animal who couldn't speak for themselves. He would make sure that their stories were told, that their suffering didn't go unnoticed. No animal should ever have to suffer like this again. With that resolve in his heart, Alex turned his attention back to the puppies in their kennel. They were safe for now. And as long as he had breath in his body, he would fight to ensure that no one else could do to them what had been done before. He would fight for them. For all the animals who needed help. It was the only way he could make things right. Alex's mind was still racing when he picked up the phone to call Charlie. The gravity of the situation, the discovery of the puppy's involvement in experiments, had weighed heavily on his shoulders. He needed someone to talk to. Someone who would understand the legal ramifications of what he had uncovered. Charlie had been his friend since their college days. And though their careers had led him down different paths, Charlie into law and Alex into veterinary care, he knew Charlie was someone he could trust with such an unsettling situation. Charlie answered the phone after a few rings. "Hey, Alex. What's up? You sound serious." "I am serious," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "I need to talk to you about something. And I need your advice. It's about the puppies." He recounted everything. The strange scars. The chemical compound in their bodies. The lab results confirming that these puppies had been used in experiments. As he spoke, Charlie's tone grew more serious. His response more cautious. When Alex finished, Charlie was silent for a moment, processing the information. This is bad, Alex. Really bad, Charlie said finally, his voice low. You're not just dealing with some rogue individual or careless pet owner. These people you're talking about, they're part of something bigger. They've covered their tracks, and they won't stop until they do it again. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. What are you saying? Who would do something like this? And why? It's not just about cruelty to animals, Alex. This is about money, power, and the kind of research that nobody wants to admit is happening behind closed doors. Charlie explained. If you're right, these experiments were funded by people with a lot to lose. People who won't hesitate to silence anyone who gets too close. That means you, and anyone who helps you, could be in danger. The words hung in the air like a weight Alex couldn't shake off. He had always known that life was full of risks. But this was different. These weren't just careless individuals, these were dangerous people, willing to do anything to protect their secrets. So, what do I do now? Alex asked, his voice a mix of fear and resolve. I'm not backing down from this. I can't. I wouldn't expect you to, Charlie said, his voice firm with conviction. But you need to be careful. You can't go after these people alone. If they've been covering their tracks this long, they won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to stop you. I'll help you, but we'll need to be discreet. Alex thought for a moment. Charlie was right. He couldn't do this on his own. Not against an organization this powerful. He needed help. Someone who understood how to navigate the legal side of things. But he also needed someone who shared his passion for animals. Someone who could help him uncover the truth without getting lost in the legal red tape. That's when Emily's name came to mind. Emily had been an animal rights activist for years, dedicated to exposing the dark side of industries that exploited animals. She was fierce, determined, and, most importantly, she wasn't afraid to take on powerful organizations. Alex had known her for a long time, and he trusted her completely. He reached out to her that evening. Emily answered the phone almost immediately, her voice warm but urgent. Alex, what's going on? You sound like you've got something important to say. I do. I need your help. It's about those puppies. I've found out they were part of some kind of experiment. I think there's a research facility behind this. And I need you to help me dig deeper. I don't know where to start. Emily's voice grew serious. You're sure? This is dangerous territory. If what you're saying is true, then we're talking about something far more sinister than we ever imagined. I know, Alex said, but we can't let them get away with it. We have to stop them. Emily, we have to find out who's responsible and expose them for what they've done. Emily hesitated for a moment before responding. All right, I'm in, but we have to be careful. We can't just go charging in without a plan. Over the next few days, the three of them worked in secret, quietly gathering information and connecting the dots. Charlie helped with the legal side, searching for any public records or indications of a research facility operating under the radar. Alex and Emily focused on finding any leads that could point them toward the facility where the experiments had been taking place. They pieced together fragments of information, each clue leading them closer to the truth. Though the path was anything but clear, they soon realized that they were being watched. It started slowly, odd cars driving past the clinic at odd hours. Figures lingering in the shadows when Alex went out for late-night walks. Alex first dismissed it as paranoia, but as the days passed, the feeling grew stronger. They were being followed. Emily was the first to notice a black sedan parked a block away from her apartment, its tinted windows concealing the driver's face. When she mentioned it to Alex, he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. They weren't just looking for answers, they were making sure no one found the truth. We're getting too close, Alex said one evening, his voice tense. They're watching us. We need to be careful. Emily nodded. her eyes sharp with determination. "We've got to keep digging. We can't back down now." The trio continued their investigation, and it wasn't long before they stumbled upon a lead that made their hearts race. They discovered an obscure reference to a facility located on the outskirts of town. A place that appeared to be involved in experimental research but was hidden from public view. It was registered under a series of convoluted legal names, making it nearly impossible to trace. But Emily's sharp instincts and Charlie's legal knowledge helped them put the pieces together. The facility was real, and it was exactly where they suspected it to be, buried deep in the heart of the rural area. Far from prying eyes, it was a covert research center, one that conducted illegal experiments on animals under the guise of legitimate scientific inquiry. They had finally uncovered the truth, but they knew that exposing it wouldn't be easy. They were up against powerful forces, people who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. But Alex, Emily, and Charlie were no longer afraid. They had come too far to turn back now. Together, they would expose the hidden horrors and bring those responsible to justice, no matter the cost. The night air was thick with tension as Alex, Emily, and Charlie stood before the old, rusted gate of the abandoned lab. It had taken days of careful planning, hours of sifting through layers of red tape, and moments of sheer luck to even find the place. But now that they were here, there was no turning back. The research facility they had uncovered wasn't just hidden, it had been deliberately erased from public knowledge. Buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and secrecy, the building loomed ahead, silent and ominous, nestled at the edge of a dense thicket of trees. It looked deserted, like something out of a forgotten nightmare. Yet Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. "This is it," Emily said quietly, her voice steady but filled with the weight of the moment. "We go in, we find the evidence, and we get out. We can't afford to take any chances." Charlie, his face hard with resolve, nodded in agreement. "Stay sharp. We don't know who else is in there." Alex felt a wave of apprehension wash over him. He had seen the dangers these people were capable of, and he knew they wouldn't hesitate to do whatever it took to keep their operation a secret. Still, he couldn't let that stop him. The puppies, and all the other animals who had been harmed, deserved justice. They had to find the proof, and they had to expose these criminals. Without another word, they slipped through the gate, their footsteps soft on the overgrown ground. The door to the facility creaked as Alex pushed it open, the sound echoing eerily in the stillness of the night. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. The building had clearly been abandoned for years, but the signs of its former use were impossible to ignore. Faded medical equipment lay scattered about, and the faint smell of chemicals lingered in the air, making Alex's stomach churn. They moved quickly, searching the building for anything that might provide evidence of the experiments. As they ventured deeper into the facility, the unease grew. Every creaking floorboard, every rustling sound, seemed to make the walls close in on them. They had no idea how much time they had before someone would realize they were there. They had to move fast. "Anything?" Charlie whispered, his eyes scanning the darkened room. "Not yet," Alex murmured, his voice low. He bent over an old desk, rifling through a pile of papers. Most were too old to be of any use, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something important was hidden in plain sight. Then, as if by fate, he found it, beneath a stack of yellowed folders. There it was, a thick file labeled Project Apex. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He opened it, his hands trembling as he sifted through the pages. There it was, the smoking gun. Detailed records of the experiments, the chemicals used, the names of the test subjects, and the dark purpose behind it all. He glanced at Emily and Charlie, both of whom were looking over his shoulder. "This is it," he said, his voice a whisper of triumph. "We've got everything we need. But just as relief began to wash over them, the sound of tires screeching on gravel shattered the silence. Alex's heart stopped. Someone was coming. They all froze, exchanging a quick glance of panic. "We have to get out of here. Now," Emily urged, her voice filled with urgency. But it was too late. The front door to the building slammed open, and several men in dark suits stormed in, their eyes cold and calculating. Alex's blood ran cold as he recognized them, the same enforcers who had been tailing them for days. They had been waiting for this moment. "You should have stayed out of this," one of the men sneered, his hand resting on the gun at his side. The others flanked him, blocking any possible escape routes. Alex's mind raced. He couldn't let them take the evidence. He couldn't let them harm the puppies. Or anyone else. Ever again. "We're not going anywhere," Alex said, his voice firm despite the fear rising in his chest. "You're done. We have everything we need to expose you." The enforcer laughed darkly. "You think you can take us down? You're out of your depth. Kid, you have no idea who you're messing with." Charlie stepped forward, his jaw clenched in defiance. "You're wrong. It's over. We're going to the authorities. All of this is going public." But the men weren't intimidated. The leader of the group took a step forward, his expression cold as ice. "The only thing going public here is your graves." The tension in the room was palpable. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he scanned the room for any way out. But before he could react, Emily stepped in front of him, her face set in determination. "You're not getting away with this," she said, her voice sharp. The enforcer paused, his eyes narrowing. "What's this? The animal rights activist? You really think you can stop us?" Emily didn't flinch. "You've hurt enough innocent animals. It ends now." For a split second, everything was still. Then, without warning, Alex lunged forward, grabbing the file with the evidence and shoving it into Emily's hands. "Get out of here!" he shouted. Emily didn't hesitate. She sprinted for the door, her footsteps echoing through the building as she raced toward safety. Charlie followed close behind, staying low to avoid drawing attention. But Alex couldn't leave. Not yet. He turned to face the enforcers, his heart racing, his fists clenched. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, standing his ground. "If you want the evidence, you'll have to go through me." The enforcers smirked. They weren't taking him seriously. But that was a mistake. Just as they moved toward him, there was a loud crash, a sound that echoed through the building. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the sound of sirens blared in the distance. Someone had tipped off the authorities. The enforcers froze, their faces draining of color as they realized they were running out of time. In the chaos that followed, Alex saw his chance. With a surge of adrenaline, he darted toward the nearest exit, slamming the door shut behind him. The enforcers scrambled, realizing they had been caught in the act. By the time the authorities arrived, the building was swarming with police, who quickly detained the criminals and confiscated the evidence. Alex, Emily, and Charlie had done it. They had exposed the operation. The criminals who had orchestrated the horrific experiments were finally in custody. The puppies were safe, their future now bright with hope. As Alex watched the authorities take the criminals away, he felt a deep sense of relief wash over him. They had won, the truth had been revealed. And in the end, the puppies had found their place in a world that was finally ready to protect them. The days that followed the arrest of the criminals were filled with a quiet sense of victory. The police had thoroughly dismantled the criminal organization, using the evidence Alex, Charlie, and Emily had risked so much to uncover. The network of experiments, the exploitation of animals, was no more, and with the criminals behind bars, Alex felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Yet he knew that the real work had only just begun. The puppies, the innocent victims of these heinous acts, were finally safe. But the scars they carried, both physical and emotional, would take time to heal. Alex was determined to be part of that healing process. He couldn't turn his back on them now. In the weeks that followed, Alex's clinic became a place of life, laughter, and growth. His once quiet home, nestled on the outskirts of town, now echoed with the sound of tiny paws scrambling across the hardwood floors. The soft squeals of playful pups, and the joyful barks that filled the air. Each of the puppies had a unique personality, their golden fur shining in the sunlight as they romped around the yard. There was Max, the bold one, always charging ahead of the others with boundless energy. Bella, the sweet-natured one, who loved curling up in Alex's lap for naps, and Daisy, the curious one, always exploring every nook and cranny of the house. There was also Buddy, who had a slight limp from an old injury, but his spirit was unbreakable. And last but not least, there was Rocky, the smallest of the group, with a feisty determination that made him stand out. Alex had spent countless hours nursing him back to health. He had been through many difficult surgeries and complicated treatments during his career as a veterinarian. But nothing had prepared him for the emotional challenge of healing these pups. He remembered the first night they arrived at his clinic, trembling and terrified, unsure of what was happening. But with patience, love, and his expert care, they slowly began to thrive. It was a long road, but as the weeks passed, they grew stronger, healthier, and more confident. They were no longer the trembling, abandoned puppies on the side of the road. They were playful, vibrant, and full of life. Alex knew that this was where they belonged, in a home filled with love, security, and warmth. It wasn't just the puppies who had been changed by this experience. Alex himself had transformed. The ordeal had shaken him, tested his limits, but it had also inspired him in ways he hadn't expected. Working alongside Emily had opened his eyes to the deeper need for animal welfare. And he realized that his small veterinary clinic wasn't enough. There was a much bigger problem out there. And if he could, he wanted to do more to make a lasting difference. Inspired by the puppies and the journey they had been on, Alex joined forces with Emily to establish a sanctuary for animals in need. The idea had always been in the back of his mind, but now it had become his mission. They worked together, pooling their resources, skills, and connections, to build a safe haven for abused, neglected, and abandoned animals. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, financial challenges, and many sleepless nights, but Alex never gave up. He knew that every animal they helped, every life they saved, was worth the effort. The sanctuary became a beacon of hope for countless animals. Word spread quickly, and before long, people from all over the region were bringing in abandoned pets, injured wildlife, and even animals rescued from neglectful homes. Alex and Emily, along with a small team of volunteers, worked tirelessly to care for them. They provided medical treatment, rehabilitation, and, most importantly, love. There were moments of heartache, of course. Not every animal they rescued made it. But there were also moments of joy, when a frightened dog took its first steps into a loving home. Or when a wild animal, nursed back to health, was released back into the wild where it belonged. Alex's heart swelled with pride as he saw the sanctuary grow and flourish. It was a testament to the power of compassion and determination. And it all started with those golden puppies, abandoned by the side of the road. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold, Alex sat outside his home with Emily, watching the puppies frolic in the yard. The once quiet place was now full of life and love. The air was warm, and the world felt peaceful. Alex smiled as he watched Max and Buddy chase each other, their tails wagging furiously, while Daisy and Rocky played in the garden. Bella lay by his feet, content and calm. It had been a long, difficult journey, but it had led to this moment, this beautiful, peaceful moment. The sound of the puppies' happy barks filled the air, and Alex felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had all been through so much, but they had come out stronger on the other side. His home, once empty and quiet, was now filled with the joy of these little lives. He had found his purpose, and it had been in the very animals he had worked so hard to protect. His bond with them was unbreakable. It wasn't just about the puppies anymore, it was about a future where animals were treated with kindness, where their suffering wasn't ignored, and where their lives had value. Alex had always been a veterinarian, but now he was something more, a protector, a voice for the voiceless. And as he sat there, surrounded by the puppies, his friends, and the warmth of the home they had all helped create, Alex knew that this was just the beginning. The work was far from over, but it was the kind of work that mattered. It was the kind of work that would change the world, one animal at a time. And in the quiet of that evening, as the puppies curled up at his feet, Alex felt a deep sense of peace. It was the peace that comes with knowing you've done everything you could, that you've made the world a little bit better. He smiled, feeling the soft fur of Bella resting against his leg. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, compassion and bravery could create new beginnings.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.